here we go. It's another Beyond the Arc. I'm Bill Reiter, my guy Brad Botkin, fellow NBA writer, CBS Sports HQer. Mr. Botkin, greetings. How you doing? How's your summer, buddy?
Couldn't be going better. I'm on vacation / not on vacation right now, but I'm in Bend, Oregon on a golf trip with some college friends and my best friend from high school. And for me, this is when people, I'm sure you get this a lot when people say, "Wow, that you get paid to do this? Like this is your
Yeah.
This is the ultimate." I'm podcasting from God's country in Bend, Oregon, and this is actually my job. So crazy.
This is how serious CBS Sports takes Beyond the Arc. We're going to preview as part of our series here the Pacific Division today. And so Brad committed to making sure the golf trip happened at the same time so he can be on the Pacific West Coast. Are you, I got to know before we get into this, are you if your golf game was one of these teams in these divisions, like what team are you? What's your golf level at?
Boy, that's a good question. Let's think of a team, probably the Kings, where like if you catch me on the right day, I can beat anyone, but right. I can also be a play-in team. So the weirdest thing I'm the weirdest golfer you've ever met. I legitimately play right and left-handed, like legitimately. So I'm not great at either. I'm like do
you have both clubs in your bag?
I do. So I played baseball
That's crazy.
My whole life left-handed. I hit left-handed. But for whatever reason, I never played golf much growing up. But when my grandfather would take me out, he would give me his clubs, and I would swing his clubs right-handed. And whenever I played golf once a year, I would do it right-handed. So when I was like 30, I was working in Arizona, and I said, well, I played baseball left-handed. Why have I never swung a golf club left-handed? I went into the PGA store. My swing speed was higher, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'm buying left-handed clubs. But since I had played right-handed for so long, all like the touch and feel shots, like 100 yards in, I couldn't adapt. Yeah. So yeah, I carry like 35 clubs around. Everybody hates me because all the club heads are banging. But it's
great though.
You've never seen anything like it.
I would be whatever NBA team is pretty good the first maybe quarter of the way, but then just keeps drinking Budweisers and the wheels come off.
I don't know. Like 70s NBA where you have like
you
have a heater and a beer at halftime.
Right. Like, hey, pretty good first half by Reiter, not bad. It's like third quarter. Is that dude drunk? Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Golf is like one sport somehow. It doesn't always work, but it does sometimes make you better to get a few beers in you. It's a very fine line.
Yeah. The problem is it's like 2.5, but it tastes so good that I just keep going. All right. So are you ready for this? We're going to go in order. I know you know the drill because you did, I think, this with John last week. We'll sort of go through each team, and then we'll come up with a best moment and a worst moment of their offseason. Man, the Clippers are such a confounding team. So pretty good season last year. They're opening a brand new stadium. But obviously, they made a decision not to pay Paul George, not the max, the money that he wanted, maybe in line with Kawhi Leonard's contract. He's gone. He's in Philly. So they got Derek Jones Jr., Nick Batum, Chris Dunn, Mo Bamba, and Kevin Porter Jr. are in. PG is gone. Russ is gone. Plumlee's gone. Also worth noting, Harden was here last year, but they didn't pay PG, and then they gave Harden a nice amount of money. 2 years, $70 million. They're still under that first apron. Look, I'll let you start it off, and I'll just preface it with I have very little optimism in the Clippers achieving any kind of meaningful season this year by the standards that maybe we thought they could last year. Are you more bullish on these guys than I am?
No. They this is like the sinking ship, but they decided to keep the two captains. It's like the same guys are there except for Jordan. It's like they just hung on to, and it's a difficult spot to be in. The Sixers were here a while back when they sort of had to pay Tobias Harris. You get into these situations where you spend so much and you invest so much time into a particular team, into a particular trio. The Harden trade is what really sunk them. That committed. Go ahead.
I'm with you, but I just don't understand. You got to throw. Sometimes you shouldn't throw good money after bad. But in for a penny, in for a pound. After the Harden trade, why not just pay Paul George? Do you have a sensible answer? Because they have not provided one.
I don't. I thought the most sensible answer, and I think this isn't in a lot of cases, but teams are very, very tied. And to be fair, I always talk about this from the basketball side. There is a business side. They're opening a new building. They can't probably go out and say, Kawhi, we can't depend on you. We're going to start looking for trades. I think basketball-wise, they should be out on this team. There's no way Kawhi Leonard is dependable. And so in that regard, it's like, yeah, don't pay Paul George because his contract's not going to age well. This is a second-round team anyway that's not going to be healthy. So it makes sense. But if you're going to your point, if you're going to bring back Harden and you're going to play the game of like, we're going to be competitive, we're going to open our building, and we're still going to sort of consider ourselves these pseudo contenders, if only on the fringe, then yeah, go all in. But I'll tell you, the bigger conversation about the Clippers is one as the league as a whole, where if the second apron is scaring Steve Ballmer, you're seeing all of these, almost every single decision this summer has been with the second apron in mind. And even Steve Ballmer is like,
that's a great point.
We just can't do this. And so it's, very, very punitive, arguably too punitive. But
that's a good point.
All of that comes around. What do you do with Paul George? Do you bite the bullet? When they made that trade to give up, and I'm thinking about this with Trae Young too, which is a little bit off of a tangent, but because they gave up Luka Doncic for Trae Young, I think it becomes, I talked about this with John, it just becomes harder to bite the bullet and get rid of Trae Young with what you gave up for him.
Right. Well, you and I both knew Schlenk pretty well, right? So,
yeah,
I like Travis.
It's not the same management, but it's like he's out of it.
Yeah, you're right. It's like going to Vegas and you've lost the mortgage money, you just are like, my wife's already leaving me. I suppose I might as well just bet everything on the off chance I can get. So here's something that somebody put to me the other day. I was talking to somebody in the NBA.
Just to finish that, for the Clippers, they gave up Shea for Paul George and Kawhi effectively, and it's very hard to bail on that.
Dominated. Yeah, you're right. I mean, but you're right. So they made that bet and they lost. But to just, if you're going to surrender. But that Harden decision doesn't make any sense. Here's something that was given to me as a theory by a guy in the NBA, a high level guy, not connected to the Clippers or the Sixers. So he was more, his theory. I'll run it by you. You can tell me if you think it's a bunch of crap or not. His theory was that I think we all agree that the Clippers are poorly run, and it's just like a matter of what are they trying to do. His theory was they simply thought PG he's not really from LA, he's from Palmdale, but he's from outside Los Angeles. He wanted to get out west. Philly was the only place that made sense. And this theory is they thought Paul George isn't moving to Philadelphia. He's not going out east. He's not dealing with the winners. I know that Philly's not indie, but he's always wanted to get back to LA, and they bluffed and they misjudged. And by the time they figured it out, they pissed him off enough. He was out of here.
Yeah, I agree.
Is that a possible? Yeah, I do too.
I think it's more than there's been actual reporting on that. I think that
I've seen stuff. Yeah, but some of that felt like leaks that were going on from his camp, and I know
that time of year it gets who's saying what and why they're saying it. There's always like the Sixers came out and said, "Oh, we don't want Paul George anymore." Remember when that came out? We're going another way. Yeah, right. They
thought they weren't getting him. Yeah, because they thought they weren't getting him. Obviously,
and it was so. To your point, I'm not sure how much you trust but if you sort of just look at the logic of it, I don't think they wanted him to leave, but again, that second apron was looming, so they thought we'll hold the line, he won't call our bluff, and we'll get him for a price that we can stomach.
Discount.
Exactly. And I think, I'd love to talk to Paul George and ask him, because nobody would ever say this about their guys in a public forum, but if you could get inside of his head, does he see what everybody else sees, that James Harden is kind of a loser, and that
I think so,
and that Kawhi Leonard is 2% chance of being healthy? There's almost no chance. So is he looking at it like everyone else?
Yeah, he'll tell us all on a podcast when he retires, right? He'll do it on his podcast 6 months after he retires. Oh, by the way, producer Aaron makes a great point that he asked, why not then just do the deal with the Warriors? I think the Clippers are so poorly run that maybe they just, there's a silly and not sort of competent spite factor that comes in where it's, well, if we're going to move him, we'll move him out east. Because the Clippers and the Warriors don't like each other. So maybe because there was a deal there. There could have been. It would all come down to if the Clippers were we just don't want to lose him for nothing, so we'll take
maybe they didn't really value, because I would almost guarantee the Warriors were not going to give Kuminga. They're getting really tight. They wouldn't even give Podziemski for Markkanen. So they're going to try to squeeze out George for a couple of draft picks and like Moses Moody. And maybe the Clippers would be like, well, at least it's not nothing. But,
it's something.
Yeah, but you do have to – it would have had to have been a sign and trade, and they would have had to match the money. And then again, I'm not a capologist, but would they be bringing back money that then puts them over the apron anyway?
But they've given so much away to build the team that they've now basically watched walk out the door, the part that was still healthy, that you have to get something back. I mean, they are not – all right, they're not in good shape. Neither of us are high on the Clippers. This is the most, I think, I'm going to talk about the Clippers all year, except for the games where Harden goes 2 of, 31 or whatever. Let's a little positivity, then a little negativity. Start us off. What is the best move? What is the highlight, the high for the Clippers this offseason?
Oh, man. I do. Okay, if we're talking about in terms of does it like amplify them as a contender, that's too much. But I do think Derek Jones is a nice sign at the number that they got him at. Batum is still a useful player. He was the best player on the court in a big game for the Sixers in Game 6 last year against the Knicks. He can still play. I think they actually did make some decent fringe moves. The whole elephant in the room with them, and we're going to do the best and worst. My worst was the Kawhi Leonard deal. It didn't happen this summer, but once they signed up for that, the whole trickle down comes. Then you made the trade for James Harden. Well, we better get him. And then to your point, well, you might as well go in on George. They sort of like tried to split the difference, and just when they had a chance to get out was to say, Kawhi, you're just not going to be held, and cut bait. And then they could have cut bait with Harden and George. But once they signed Kawhi, the river was rolling downhill.
All right. I'm going to go best new arena, since you hit the other one. I mean, it is going to be a shiny, beautiful thing, and it's going to make money in the long run. And it's going to be really cool. And we keep making the same joke about the toilets, but apparently there's an unlimited number of toilets. So that's cool. Look, there's a lot of worse moves. I'm going to go, though, just mismanaging Paul George. I don't believe, had Paul George stayed, the Clippers were going to be any kind of legitimate force. And I don't think you do either. But they did finish 4th in the West last year. He did come off PG, the best season of his career that I'm not sure everybody paid attention. I mean, it's the best season he's had in the NBA. And go back to that Vegas. Yeah, it was amazing. And go back to that Vegas analogy. I mean, you've already lost everything. You've lost everything. You've got this small sort of unlikelihood, but odds. Keep the ticket, man. Put the remaining money down, and I would make sure Paul George stays. It is an incompetent disaster from the front office. Some people tell you it's ownership kind of meddling. Doesn't matter. Horribly run decision.
Bill, I'd be curious if you agree with this, but I mean, I think we all still think of Kawhi Leonard in like every once in a while he has a month healthy stint, and we still remember Toronto. But I would say Paul George is the best player on that team.
Easily.
Yeah.
I consider Kawhi Leonard one of the, sort of like on the fringe of this now, but one of the great players that I've ever seen in this era. And I feel like he is all but retired. Like the guy, I don't consider him a present tense star anymore, because I'm done investing any hope, belief, positivity in the idea that he's going to come back and play 62 games and then play, and 62 is low, and then play an entire postseason. Like he is not the Kawhi Leonard we saw in Toronto. Which I
think the league agrees with you too, because the market tells you your value. And I don't think if Kawhi Leonard was the free agent and not George, I don't think that Philadelphia or anyone else is giving Kawhi what George got. I don't think anyone would attach to a max with him. So that sort of tells you. Yeah.
No, it's more like a Harden deal, maybe, which is like more of a premium on a short timeline, because you're basically betting on the hope that he comes good, but he doesn't. You're not tied up for a long time. The Pacific Division is a bleep show, by the way. So we just did the Clippers, who were the best team in the division last year. The next best team, the Phoenix Suns, who I don't know where you're at. We're going to find out. I think they're a disaster. We're going to get into it when we come back. Phoenix Suns, up, thumbs down, Gladiator style, next here on Beyond the Arc.
College football is back. SMU at Nevada on CBS Sports Network.
All right, so welcome back into the show. Bill Reiter talking to Brad Botkin. He's a better golfer than I am. He's a switch golfer, by the way. I played tennis. Played a switch tennis player once. Blew my mind. The Phoenix Suns are not particularly well run. Very similar to the Clippers. You can disagree. That's my view. All right, Eric Gordon's the main piece that's out. Drew Eubanks is out. Roddy's out. They added Tyus Jones, Mason Plumlee, Monty Morris, and I'm forgetting somebody. EJ Little, is that the guy that I'm? Yeah,
we're digging in the well.
Yeah, that's gross. So Bradley Beal is still there. No trade clause. Kevin Durant looked pretty good in the Olympics when he was there. Devin Booker's obviously got a lot of upside. They also added a brand new coach. They got rid of, I think, a really good coach in Frank Vogel, and they brought in another really good coach in Bud and Mike Budenholzer. I guess you're a little more positively inclined to the Suns in my introduction?
No, the same thing as the Clippers. I think, and we're going to talk about the Lakers. We're going to talk about the Warriors. This idea of the big three is pretty much out for a lot of reasons. We don't need to get into the weeds of all the cap stuff, but it's just from a pure basketball standpoint. Yeah, it really does. From a pure basketball standpoint, it's difficult to not start getting diminishing returns on that third guy. And that's the guy that you end up losing on. So the Suns are losing on Bradley Beal. He's not even close to a superstar player there. In a vacuum, we put three superstars together, but you get diminishing returns. And Bradley Beal just ends up being a really, really overpaid, overqualified third wheel. And you can't win with that model. They compromise too much depth. And we see that they had stagnant offense. And so there's a lot of reliance on every Kevin Durant team and Devin Booker. When Kevin Durant, obviously him and Stephen Curry are two of the best players ever, but they also complement each other because of Curry's off-ball movement. Devin Booker and Kevin Durant are very redundant. They're very self-creative. They're very mid-range specific players. And so and they did have a good, if you look at the offensive rating, yeah, they're good. But in these tense situations,
but not extraordinary. They were 9th in offensive rating. It's not like they were second in the NBA. I know you want top 10 in both, but it's not as if their offense was so overwhelming it made up for their lack of depth.
It was, though, when those three were on the court. And that's
at times.
Yeah.
Which was rare.
Overall, yeah, they don't. But if you look at like 5-man units or whatever, those five guys do perform. But regular season numbers are misleading because you get into the playoffs and these games, there's like 10 possessions. And sometimes they're in the second quarter, but it's when shots really have to be creative, and they just become predictable. They become slow. They look for the same spots, and in those 10 to 15 possessions, they don't have as much variety, and that I think hurts them. So I think those three guys, you're getting diminishing returns on what they are all.
Let me jump in. Do you think Bud can make adjustments that can spark the offense? Because I think he's a great coach.
He is. But I'd be interested in what you think about this. In my opinion, I said this to John last week, but I think there's like 4 coaches that really move a needle that can actually do something outside of what the roster allows them. They're all pretty good. But I mean, like the Hawks made this mistake with Quinn Snyder. They thought with the same roster, he's just such a good coach that he's going to make the difference. Doc Rivers is going to make a difference. And you almost.
Well, Doc Rivers is not a good coach, but I hear your point.
But yeah, all these teams, because it's the most easily switchable variable to get the coach out. The Lakers thought they'd be better with Ham, and then they think they'll be better with Redick, and
Well, give me your 4. Who are your 4 coaches? Give me
Spoelstra can obviously do more with the roster. Kerr is for everybody's with Kerr.
You're putting Kerr on there?
Well, listen, Bill. The year before Kerr showed up, they were the 12th ranked offense and a first round out.
I'm aware of the history, but I mean, all right. I don't have a whole Kerr. Okay, you got Kerr on the list. I wouldn't.
Oh yeah, there's been few teams that have in 1 year go up 16 wins and from the first round.
I wonder if it has anything to do with Steph coming into the zone. Like I'm just like thinking out loud here, but maybe it's a big Steph Curry effect. I don't know. I mean, I'm just spitballing here. Top 5 player of all time, history of the game. Like so many people ride so many accolades behind dudes that we look back like, oh, that Jordan, Curry, LeBron. Like, look, I think Kerr's a fine coach. I don't think he's on the level of Eric Spoelstra.
I just think, I don't either. But I do think that to think that what that team went through to from 13 to 14. With the only change was Livingston. The ball movement just freed Curry up in a way. It was painful under Mark Jackson. Everything was.
I mean, Mark Jackson was awful.
Yeah,
All right, so you got Popovich. Are you going to put Pop on there?
Yeah, of course, Popovich, and I think Lou. I think Lou can make a legitimate difference. But I mostly think the Frank Vogels and the Quinn Snyders and I do think Budenholzer. I think most of these guys are pretty replaceable. They're all very good, but I don't think Budenholzer comes in and suddenly the Suns are a different team. I think they're very, very steeped in their identity because every Kevin Durant team is. And I don't think the 3 superstar model works.
It doesn't work. And by the way, they don't have a third superstar.
That's
right. Paying, and he's got a no trade clause. All right, so we have time to get to the Lakers. Give me best and worst if you want on the Suns, who, by the way, everyone knows, obviously very handicapped by the decisions they've made. Not a lot of flexibility to do a lot. We were talking about the dregs, but what do you like? What do you not like?
Well, the same as the Clippers. I don't believe in them in terms of them making a championship difference. But if you remove the expectations that come with the star power, getting Tyus Jones he's really good, and Monty Morris too. They the one thing they missed is sort of that classic pure distributor, organize the offense, get Kevin Durant the ball at the spots that he wants it. I don't think it pushes them into another tier of contention, but that is a good move. And my worst move, the Bradley Beal thing was just a huge overreach. It's the exact same trade the Clippers made for James Harden. Like we got to get a third guy.
Oh, even worse.
Yeah. So
even worse. No trade clause, long deal. All right. I'm gonna go. I'm with you on Jones. My worst is probably a little controversial, and I know this isn't realistic because Ishbia has shown himself to think he's in a fantasy basketball league and not in an actual professional reality. But I think that they should have just moved on from Durant. You can't move Beal. He has a no trade clause. I love KD, but Booker is young enough that you have to have a cornerstone to build around. And KD has shown himself open to the idea of going other places, and the return would have been extraordinary, especially you've got enough. There's time. I know he's older. I would have done the bold thing and moved KD, but any organization to make the idiocy of moves that we've talked about before this isn't smart or bold enough to move on from Kevin Durant, but I still think they should have. Lakers are interesting. They're one of the few teams outside the draft that didn't make any real additions. I know they brought back a couple guys, LeBron James being the main one, and connects an interesting draft pick at 17. And I think, for me, Brad, I think people see the Lakers, maybe it's because I'm in LA, it's a Rorschach test. They see what they want to see. People that don't think they're good or don't like the Lakers point out that they're just a playing team again and again and again. And all my neighbors and all these Lakers fans I know say, well, they made the conference finals a couple years ago. AD was great. LeBron was amazing in the Olympics. Obviously, they've got a new head coach in JJ Redick, who is a huge question mark for me. What is success for you if you're the Lakers, and do they meet that standard this year?
Well, if success is a title, then no, they don't meet the standard. I keep repeating myself on this point, but I said to John, this one of my firmest beliefs in the NBA is that expectations are the root of frustration. If you have your expectations in line, I fear for a team.
What's the right expectation?
The right expectation is a Lakers team that can be. No, they have every right to believe if things go right, they could contend for a home court advantage the first round. That's reasonable. Probably
home court advantage.
Sure. I mean, we saw how things broke last year. The West is super deep. 3 games are going to separate 3 and 7. So I'm not saying I would bet on it, but they would have every right to believe in their war room.
Get to 4.
Things go right. Yeah, I think they can believe that. But Bill,
I don't believe it.
I don't either. But I don't think if the late, because everybody's going to have higher hopes.
It's a real 4 is a realistic goal. That's the goal maybe for the regular season.
Yeah, I think if you're asking me for a ceiling, I don't think they'd be crazy to think that if things break right. But the bigger conversation here, Bill, is what we just had about the Clippers. And it goes back to what Danny Ainge did when and maybe you could say that Paul Pierce had a lot of history. Maybe Garnett didn't, but he saw when that was done. And he wasn't afraid to move a big name. So you just said you would have traded Durant. We're both in agreement that I would have looked to trade Paul George or Kawhi Leonard earlier. Yep. I'd trade LeBron.
But here's the thing. And at the interesting Rob Pelinka, I don't think is particularly good at his job. So I don't. A couple things. A, I don't hate it, and B, I don't think LeBron's open to it. I'm sure you saw the Rich Paul report that came out from Mark Stein.
Yeah,
that basically he put us up. I hear you. LeBron's not going to. I don't think LeBron will leave.
No,
I don't know. I mean, he's not leaving LA, so you can't.
There's
And let me offer this too. Sorry to interrupt. Let me offer this too. Like that organization, going back to Dr. Buss and Jeannie follows this too, are very treat our stars well, player empowerment to the end. Like they gave, may he rest in peace, they gave Kobe what is really in basketball terms a dumb deal in the last 2 years of his career. But I didn't understand now what I do now, which is it makes sense for the Lakers, and it's a part of the reason LeBron James will go there because if you're a star, you get treated a certain way. So you're right in a basketball sense. I just don't think Pelinka's smart enough to do it. I don't think the Lakers way would allow it.
I'm not on the inside of those talks, so I don't know. I just don't know if I look at things from a basketball standpoint, and when things are over, they're over. And I think that Kobe deal was a disaster. I wonder if that's just something that people like us come up with to talk about, or if they had traded Kobe or not paid him his money, would LeBron have really said, no, they did Kobe dirty?
I mean, there's no way to know, but they believe it. I mean, dude, I'm with you. I was on LA radio saying they shouldn't have done it. That made me really popular in LA. We're in agreement. It's just, I do think it's philosophical for the Lakers rather than strategic accidental incompetence like maybe we've seen from Phoenix and a new owner.
I agree with that.
It's just the way they do it. Yeah. JJ Redick, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know how that's going to work. Do you have like a strong guesstimate on whether you think he succeeds or doesn't over a 2 or 3 year timeline in LA? That not 5 years from now or 10 years from now somewhere else. No, this job, confidence level.
I think this is ridiculous. That they're trying to draw all of these comparisons on paper. Where like they tried the Steve Kerr thing because it's like, oh, they both came from TV and they're first time coaches. Like, what does that mean? That just means that. But they try to act like they're on a similar path, right? And then,
can we tell the audience you are a Warriors guy though? You're from there, like you are a Warriors guy.
I got plenty of problems with Kerr. I just, as somebody who
I just want the context.
As somebody who grew up with the Warriors, the guy who I didn't just show up in 2014. So the guy who took this team in 1 year.
I get it. We don't have another Kerr. We're getting to Kerr. I promise. He's coming up.
Okay. So they compare Redick to Kerr, and then they also that ridiculous Pat Riley thing. Where it's like he could be our Pat Riley because he's slick. He's a good looking guy.
Yeah, that is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. So, but
probably
he is not. I'm just going on statistics. We'll go back to your Vegas. Let's go back to Vegas for a minute. Everything is odds. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but the odds are he's not going to be one of the 2% of coaches who move the needle. That's the odds. Yeah. So I just don't think so. Yeah. I think listen, I've never talked to JJ personally. I think he comes off very arrogant. I think
I do too.
Oh my God.
Oh, he's so unlikable. Which is fine if you win.
And he's going to come in and he's going to the first thing he said
I'm smarter than everybody.
Right. We're going to play LeBron off ball. What Lakers coach hasn't said we're going to get LeBron off ball and conserve his energy? That's why they got Russell Westbrook.
Dude, I've been hearing this since he went back to Cleveland when I covered LeBron. Remember, and then in January, LeBron had to take over. Oh, what was that guy's name? I'm totally blanking. David Blatt. And then LeBron's like, no, man, in January, I'm going to be the point forward. By the way, can I go back to your Pat Riley thing? It's so funny. Pat Riley is a conservatively top 5, 6 coach in the history of the game.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. They're
JJ Redick.
Bill, they're literally drawing it on a camera-friendly guy. That's it. That the same thing with Kerr. They're doing it simply because they both came from TV. It has nothing. There's no reason to say they have similarities as a coach or what. It's just this smooth guy. It's ridiculous.
All right. Give me your best and your worst move.
Okay, best move without question, and it was luck. They didn't do anything, but Connect falling to them at 17. Nobody. I mean, I'm not a draft guy, but I didn't read a single mock that had him really outside the top 10. So he falls to them at 17. They need shooting. If he's ready to come in and at least be a spacer and can hit some big buckets now and again, that's a big win for them. I mean, we have to talk about Bronny. I obviously don't think he contributes here. So whether you think this was a good or bad move is comes down to how much stock you put in keeping LeBron happy.
A lot.
And a lot of people can have different opinions on that. But that was either a good or bad move based on if you think this is, let's just keep LeBron happy.
Yeah, it's a good call. All right, my best and worst are this is a little on the line, so I'm going to context him because I could be wrong. Best is firing Darvin Ham, like super nice guy, but I've covered LeBron teams where LeBron has moved on, where he's just over a coach. Yeah. And other than Spoelstra, where Riley backed him back in 2010-11 when I was covering that, 17 games in, LeBron tried to have him fired. I mean, it's over. It's over. Like, once LeBron is that out on you where he's publicly humiliating you in various ways, not even passive-aggressively, it's over. Yeah. So best move, moving on from a coach, whereas worst move, and I could be wrong. You said there's no crystal ball, but I think it's hiring JJ Redick. No, you can move on from a guy because LeBron, but you can't hire his podcast buddy. And I'm with you that I'm highly skeptical that JJ as a first-time coach is going to, because this team is not good enough, as you said, to do like major things. No. And those are the unrealistic expectations that are now on JJ Redick's shoulders.
And
so I think
Bill, they're only going to get higher because of what LeBron just did in the Olympics. People are going to then transfer that over to, why can't the Lakers get this straight? They just had AD and LeBron play big parts. LeBron was the MVP. And
right. They were awesome.
And you should think he should be able to do that in the NBA. Yep. And that's going to heighten the expectations, which is going to heighten the frustration.
Oh, by the way, connected to my worst moment hiring JJ Redick was the Dan Hurley experience. I forgot about ability. That. I know. It's a nightmare. It's like when you wake up and you've had a nightmare and then you realize it's too unrealistic to have actually happened. But that's how I feel about the Hurley thing.
30 seconds, you're like, God, I hope that was a
nightmare. Right. The Hurley thing's real, but my brain has trouble believing it actually was reality. That's how far things have fallen.
Totally, that's funny you say. I mean, that was about to be the biggest story in the sports world, and I totally forgot it happened.
Me too. Dude, me too. Because I can't keep up with all the Pacific Division shenanigans and mistakes. And all right. By the way, I don't think the Kings cover themselves in glory either. So we're gonna not as significantly, because maybe they're not as significant a team as the first three. We're gonna close out the show. Bill Reiter, Brad Botkin, Beyond the Arc. When we come back, we're talking Kings, and then we'll talk Brad's Warriors. And I have a feeling maybe Steve Kerr will get into that conversation after this message. All right, Kings. Last year tied with the Warriors. Producer Aaron reminded me, but had the tiebreaker. Big addition is DeMar DeRozan. I'll be curious what you think about that fit. Jalen McDaniels comes in. They lost Harrison Barnes. They lost Davion Mitchell. They lost a couple other random guys. They're under the first apron, and this is a team that kind of felt like it took a step back a little bit from a couple seasons ago. What was a really magical regular season. They ran into the Warriors in the playoffs. Let's start wherever you want, but DeRozan, I like DeRozan as a player in some spots. I don't get it in Sacramento.
Yeah, it's from a pure fit standpoint. He kind of needs to control the ball, and they're going to do that with De'Aaron Fox. They're going to play there. I do think he can do some interesting stuff at the foul line with two-man game with Sabonis.
He's a great clutch player, but so is Fox.
And the other thing, Bill, is he's going to play like 78 games. And in the regular season, the reason the Kings had the year they had 2 years ago, if you go and look at the minutes that their starters played, they weren't hurt all year. They played, they weren't the third best team in the league when everybody was healthy, but they were healthy all year. And DeRozan's going to give them big minutes if his career continues on the same course. He's going to play 75-plus games. That's big for 5 more wins in the Western Conference, where 3 wins is the difference between home court advantage and a play-in spot.
Right. And the West, as you said, is vicious this year and crowded. So every edge matters.
And when things are crowded, just like the Lakers, you can start convincing yourself when you only have to jump 3 games. You can start convincing yourself of things that probably aren't true, but who knows? You stay healthy, another team, 3 games isn't a lot. So from that standpoint, I like DeRozan from the durability, his ability to guarantee them offense in clutch moments. Obviously, the defense isn't there, and the team as a whole struggles with that. But I'll be curious what you think about this. If I remove the fit from it, if we go back to the expectations of teams, I look at like a team like the Timberwolves, and everybody hated that Rudy Gobert trade. They hated.
Yeah, that's true. 4 first-round picks.
And he didn't fit. There was all these weird fit things. Oh, man, he doesn't stretch the floor. Now Anthony Edwards
That's a great comp.
Have space. There was all these fit concerns. But a team like the Timberwolves, who has been down for so long, if you just add the talent and hope,
that's a good call.
And for the Kings, the fit isn't great, but they added a great player. Maybe it works.
Look, I love the point. It is a great point. I'm just going to add, just thinking about it, they also had Anthony Edwards, who's probably emerging as a top future 3 or 5 player in the game, and that doesn't exist in Sacramento. And that, Ant carried that team at times when guys went down to injury.
They went to the best defense we've ever seen.
That, I understand, but that level of it's a totally different model because the Kings don't care at all about defense, and they're gonna run. I should have noted, credit to them, and really big. We all thought, John and Ash and I don't know where you were, but on the pod all year, we kept saying as if it was a done deal. Well, Malik Monk won't be back. The way that the CBA is going to work, they're not going to be able to. He's going to get paid, and he took a team-friendly deal and he stuck around, and that is a huge addition, even though it's not an addition, right? It's just a continuation because we all thought that was going to be a void, and it's not, and that's a big one too.
We're jumping to the best move. There's no question.
Let's go best move. Let's just get to it.
I think there's no question Malik Monk is probably a $100 million player. He's awesome. And the other thing that he does for them, not only does retaining his productivity big, but he also keeps Kevin Huerter as a trade piece. They're redundant. I don't think the Kings are done. I think Huerter is somebody that we can see moved at the deadline.
I like Huerter.
I do too.
Yeah, it's a good piece. It's a good piece. Yeah.
But if you're going to pay Monk, that's a good piece to trade. Throw in a pick, and you can get something real for that. Address the defensive, address the wing defense. So I think getting Monk on that deal and getting DeRozan from we're a downtrodden franchise. We had one decent year. We can't afford to so much split hairs with fit. Let's get a really good player, at times an awesome player, and then hope that just the pure talent level, as Rudy Gobert did for the defense in Minnesota, hope that it's enough to sort of cover up because the Kings don't have to win a title for this to be a success. I think if DeRozan gets them into a solid, first round team again, and they're battling to 7 games, that's the whole expectation conversation. If it's when the teams like the Clippers go out and add Harden and they have to win a title for it to work, that's when I think the Sixers, the same with the Timberwolves, they just had to become a good, respectable team. And
you like the talent addition. Get more. And by the way, not taking a shot at the city of Sacramento, but it's Sacramento. It's not as easy to recruit there as other places. It's not. So to your point, adding talent, maybe you always have to give a little more leeway. If you can get talent in, you get talent in. Did you give your worst? Did you give? Because I'm a little conflicted on my worst. I was going to go DeMar DeRozan, but you kind of talked me out of it. I might go the weird Mike Brown negotiating situation that played out.
But the way they handled that.
But it felt like an almost vote of no confidence before it wasn't, and maybe none of that. And by the way, Brown's a great guy, and people love him, and maybe it doesn't matter, but it just felt strange.
Yeah, I think they should have taken. I don't think Mike Brown is a needle mover. I think he had a nice year when De'Aaron Fox. They were healthy all year. Circumstances dictated for them things to go their way, and they played a nice play-in series, and so they rewarded him. I don't think they were wrong to not want to back up the Brinks truck for him. Because a lot of these teams do that. I remember when the Hawks made their run in 21, that was circumstantial. The Ben Simmons meltdown.
Oh, that was such a. I'll say this in defense of Mike Brown.
Immediately went and paid Nate McMillan. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, dude, but I knew it was a disaster when it happened.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, and I know, that know people in that organization thought it was so basically McMillan had leverage and he used it. I think Mike Brown had some leverage here, or thought he did, because they've been so inconsistent in Sacramento, just in how their front office has been run, who's run it, their coaching situation. Mike Brown he's not a needle mover, but he's a professional and he's good at his job and he's very well regarded in that locker room. And I don't think the Kings could sort of have the historical culture built up to be able to just be like, we'll go hire some JJ Redick guy.
And I like that point, because every team is different. And you're right. With the Kings, anything that brings stability, which Mike Brown does, is worth it.
And here's the thing. If you're going to pay him or not pay him, whatever, don't do it publicly. And that goes back to that sort of weird call. I think Mike Brown is much better and has created a much better culture in that locker room than actually exists in other parts of the building. And that's probably part of why he thought he should get paid too. He thought, I'm speculating sort of. I've talked to some people, but not in the Kings. But I think there's a world where Mike Brown thinks I'm working for a bunch of bozos, a bunch of clowns.
Yeah.
I'm the most stable part of this organization. Pay me my money. And by the way, he got paid. So it was just a weird decision to do it publicly. All right, are you your Golden State Warriors? By the way, I love the Warriors only because I love Steph. Yeah. I just like everybody does, right? And I was lucky enough when I was doing my on the ground NBA reporting, where I was traveling all the time, when Steph hadn't quite made it, so I got to hang out with him a couple times, just shoot arounds, whatever, have some experiences. I can confirm what everybody knows. He's a great guy. He wouldn't know my name from Adam, but he's just a really nice dude. Okay, so Kyle Anderson gets added, Buddy Hield gets added, Melton gets added, a guy named Klay Thompson, I think you've heard of, leaves. CP3 also gone. I'm not a big, as you probably know, not a big CP3 guy. I mean, look, Steph is still Steph, and obviously we just saw in those last two Olympics games, put him in the position to do magic, and he can do magic. I have tried so many years to convince myself the Warriors are good enough that Steph title, was that 2 years ago? Was that just 2 years ago?
Yeah.
3 ago.
No,
Boston, Denver, right.
That's it.
2 years, 3 championships ago.
Yeah.
Boston, Denver.
There's been two since. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that long ago.
No. But it was like Jordan Poole was there, so it was a long time ago. It's weird. It was, but it wasn't.
I think Klay moving on is the right thing. I think I understand it. I'm really excited to see when he goes back to the Bay, not because I think it'll be an animosity game. I think it'll be a chip on your shoulder / sort of emotional reunion game. It'll be amazing. But from a basketball perspective, I would like to convince myself they're any different than the Lakers, and I'm not even sure that they're that good. I mean, they have Steph, and that is what maybe Kuminga makes a jump, but he has not significantly enough under Steve Kerr. And I know that you and I aren't aligned on Kerr, but I don't trust Steve Kerr to be able to take the pieces he has and properly thread whatever needle you need to get out of the play. They look like a play-in team to me.
I agree. So I'm going to go back to what you said earlier about Steve Kerr and him coming along at a fortuitous time when Steph Curry came along. There was a lot of belief that the Warriors had become a system team like the Spurs, that you could plug anyone in and that system was going to spit out a contender. And Steph Curry is the system. And when you don't have these other pieces,
he is the system.
Steph Curry work because it takes super anticipatory passing. It takes the screen it's all impromptu and random. And when all the pieces aren't working perfectly, when Klay Thompson isn't as much of a threat, when Draymond Green is a zero threat as a shooter, when you don't have any size, it all started you started to chip away at the peripheries of the system. And then people, again, the expectation are we still have Steph, we still have the system, we should be able to spit out a contender. And now they're like every other team in the league. They just don't have good enough players. And people are still under the
That's what it is.
That's it. And people are still under the impression that they can play above that because of the system and because of Steph.
Here's the thing. I think Steph's, for me, the 5th best player of all time. And maybe that's too high. That's for me. So that's my list. But I've got LeBron at 1 or 2, probably 1. So my point is LeBron, right, better than Steph, obviously. But LeBron can't win with the Lakers, and he's got Anthony Davis.
Oh,
I mean, and you said this earlier, we don't live in a big 3 era anymore. And even a big 2 is not sufficient if you don't have a well-run team and the right pieces and the right guys. LeBron and AD should be enough to be a top 4 team in the old model. It's not.
Oh, yeah.
Steph doesn't have an Anthony Davis. There is, so it's poor squad planning, to take a soccer term. A little Barcelona, by the way, La Liga this week. Let's go. We won. It's just they did not do a great job anticipating and preparing for the, sort of this era of Steph. And the championship they got 2 years ago was a Steph thing. I mean, there was some residual Clay moments, so he's already delivered a championship the Warriors probably didn't earn in their front office or their coaching staff, in my opinion, 2 years ago. And that's why I wish they'd not been able to, like, you nab Paul George.
Yeah.
You add that talent piece. Yeah, maybe. Steph's going to be great, but they're not good enough.
Yeah, they're not.
You know?
So what that title did, it's always like give and take. So they won the title. That's awesome. But it also sort of over-validated the two-timeline approach because it's like, oh, we can do the pool and the Kaminga.
My
and
kid just walking in.
We don't have
Sorry.
to. We'll see if your kid agrees with this. So
tell me.
So
Ask me.
if they should have moved on from Wiseman before they did, they probably should have moved on from Kaminga, and now he's gotten good enough where it's kind
shouldn't have drafted Wiseman. By the way, shouldn't have drafted Wiseman too.
Yeah, exactly. So that two timeline approach that they were taking was it got validated by that kind of accidental championship that they won, and they should have been off that train a long time ago. And so I think from a basket, again, you always have to account for the business of it. This is all a business, and so Steph makes them a lot of money, and staying, the Clippers are opening a new building. That's always LeBron in LA. That's always a part of the conversation. But from a basketball standpoint, it's a very bad place to be when you're trying to walk the middle ground. The Lakers want to be good. They want to stay in the business of saying they're a contender, but they're not going to give up their draft picks to go all in. The Clippers want to be a contender, but they're not going to pay George. The Warriors want to be a contender, but they're not going to go all in on marketing. They're freaking withholding Brandon Pajemski. So it's like they have to go in or out, and they're trying to play this middle ground that is fruitless.
It's a great point, and I'm going to add that there's a disease out there in all sports that when you have, and I mean like 1% of the 1% of the 1%, when you have an all-time great, what happens sometimes is that all the people that are in that great's orbit start to assume they're a bigger part of the success that's going on than they actually are. Jerry Krause was not the GM that he thought he was when he was with Jordan. There's a multitude of players, J.R. Smith, let's pick on him, who thought they were superstars remade when they played with LeBron. And I think that front office, and maybe Steve Kerr, but certainly that front office didn't get punished for some of its short-sightedness or poor decision-making or the Wiseman draft, because Steph was there to pick them up. And I've known people in our business too, Brad, who like have good fortune or work with the right host or work, and they think that they're the genius. Because human beings by nature, like when things go well, want to think I'm the reason. And I think it was Steph just covered up for a multitude of flaws, the way that Messi does in soccer, the way that Jordan did, the way that LeBron has most of his career. And then you wake up one day and all of a sudden Clay has aged and had an injury they didn't anticipate. And Draymond is a little bit older. And Draymond's amazing, but the wear and tear, right? Miles, not the years. He's a physical player. He gives everything. So you have a lesser version of those two guys. You don't have the depth around you. You maybe didn't think Kevin Durant was going to leave, but he got jealous, and you haven't properly prepared. And I think that's why Bob Myers left. He knew that, in my opinion, he steered that Titanic into the iceberg and thought, I'm going to get off before they realize this thing's leaking.
Yeah, also before he had to be the one to pull the plug on Clay.
That's right.
Nobody wanted to do that. And yeah, I don't think Draymond Green's worth what they paid him. So they're taking half measures. They're like, we want to keep this together. We're going to pay Draymond, but we're not going to keep it together with Clay. We want to stay young and not get rid of these guys when we do it. But then when we get desperate, okay, now we want to sort of go after marketing, but keep. And it's like if you want to me, it is the business always clouds it. But from a basketball standpoint, I think the Warriors are done. Even as a Warriors fan, from a basketball standpoint, if I take the business out of it, I think you could set your franchise. You want to talk about the next phase? They're always talking about the bridge to the next era.
Yeah.
You could trade Steph.
There's no next era.
Trade
Steph?
And
no.
I'm not saying I would.
No.
I wouldn't do it. But that level of player, whether it's LeBron, Kawhi, Steph, it was Paul Pierce at one time in Boston. If you really want to take it to the next era, you have to consider moves that are uncomfortable to make. Now, Clay was uncomfortable. They did it. Steph is too uncomfortable. But these teams try to do it halfway. They do it halfway where we probably shouldn't pay Draymond, but we're going to cut.
That's a big mistake.
It's like, then you're sending two different messages. And I think the Warriors are just stuck in between. They won 4 titles.
All right.
And Steve Kerr is not going to squeeze more juice out of this roster than it has. Having said all that, in a vacuum, their moves this summer were good. Kyle Anderson fits. He's a versatile guy.
Yeah, I like Hield. I like Buddy Hield.
Buddy Hield's basically what Klay Thompson is now. That's
the team.
It's a nice.
Okay, give me. Well, we're at the. By the way, I just wrote we're at the 50-minute mark, so we're churning.
Okay.
Let's go quick best and worst, and I have a quick sort of bonus question. Best move, worst move, Warriors. All season.
Okay, I think the best move was I can't single out one, but the 3 guys they got for the prices that they did and the roles that they fill, I think they had a good offseason. For me, the bad part is that it doesn't answer any of the the sort of 1 foot in, 1 foot out approach. I think they're still not sure if they're all in or not. I would have just given up Pajemski and said, let's to hell with it. Let's get Markkanen, and he can be our next. If it doesn't work with Steph, he's at least from an age standpoint, he's the next guy. So I would go all in. I think Steph's still good enough to justify it. And I think with the peripheral moves that they made, now a second guy, they actually could be good enough. Last year, a second guy, they probably weren't good enough. But I do think the Melton, the Hield, the Anderson additions, if they got a second guy, I do think they could be pretty good.
All right, I'm going to go best of Steph's Olympics because that kind of greatness and that kind of reminder can mean something. And worse, I'm going to just echo what you said. You got to spend what you got to spend. You got to go get a superstar. I'll say this in defense of not getting Markkanen. When you're negotiating with Danny Ainge and he knows he has you between the rock and a hard place, he's going to drive a hard deal. I know we got to go quickly. Of all these teams in the Pacific Division we just went through, who finishes highest in the West? Because there's not a lot of. It's not. I don't.
That's a good.
I think
it's going to
Phoenix
come
or LA, right?
Who do you think?
Phoenix or LA, which I hate as an answer.
I don't think LA, because I don't think there's any way LA can prioritize the regular season. The only chance they have is being healthy to be the 7th seed and try to make a run.
That leaves you with the Clippers, Phoenix, the Kings, and the Warriors, man. It's going to be ugly.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Kings because I think what I said about DeRozan playing 78 games while the Clippers and the Warriors and the Lakers are old. I think the Kings are a good team. They were pretty much as good as they were the year before. The conference just got better. I think DeRozan playing 78 games and giving you 24 a game and having that kind of well to go to offensively wins you a lot of regular season games. I'm going to go Kings.
I'm going to go Lakers, and I think they finish 5, 6, or 7. So I think it's going to be a cluster of mediocrity.
Listen, the thing is, Bill, the Lakers are not a bad team. They've got 2 awesome players. It's just that
durability.
We talk about them in a tier that they're not in. So
you're right. Expectations versus reality.
Yeah. I think they're a good team.
All right. Brad Botkin, great stuff. Let me leave you with a golf tip. I've been thinking about this.
Okay.
When you get to the 4th or 5th Budweiser, just go with it. It'll help. And swing harder.
Dude, you know what? So we used to do a bachelor party when all my friends are married now, but when we were all getting married, we used to do a bachelor party where if you drank a beer from tee to green, if you drank a beer during that time, you got to take a stroke off that hole. And so it became a very, very fine line of, man, I just doubled the first hole. I need to chug a couple beers to get back to even. But then on hole 4, you're 8 deep and you can't swing.
Every hole? Well, I would be able to one per hole.
Yeah, that's the max. So, let's say
I could carve 10. I could carve 10 off.
So here's the question: let's say you
I could shoot 90.
If you bogey the first hole, are you immediately taking a beer to get back to even? Are you waiting?
I'm taking Brad. I've already had a beer, by the way, and then I could eagle, which I've only done once in my life. I could eagle that hole, and I'm doing a beer on the second hole. Okay. I'm made for this game.
Yeah, I was the guy that was I was 12 over after 8, and then I'm trying to chug 6 beers by the time.
No, I'm drinking the first 5. All right, great stuff, Brad Botkin, my fellow. What are we? I don't know what our titles are. Senior NBA writers or something.
NBA writer.
Whatever. We're out about the NBA. CBS Sports HQ. Subscribe, recommend, tell your friends, homing pigeons, whatever, all that stuff. I'm back on Wednesday, I think, with John. I think John's back on Wednesday. Are you and I doing another one this week too?
I can. Just tell me the time.
I don't. I'm a very, very well-informed host. All right. Thank you to Brad Botkin. Brad on Friday, John on Wednesday. I'm Bill Reiter. This is Beyond the Arc.